Stop whatever you are doing, because what you are about to hear is not a drill, not a simulation, and not the kind of geopolitical speculation that gets walked back by morning. Tonight, the entire strategic architecture of the Middle East has been rewritten in a single devastating transaction that Western military planners have spent the last 72 hours attempting to comprehend and failing catastrophically. Iran has just received from the People's Republic of China a weapon system so advanced, so utterly beyond the interceptive capability of every defensive network currently deployed in the Eastern Mediterranean, that the operational lifespan of Tel Aviv as a functioning command center can now be measured not in weeks or days, but in hours. 3 hours to be precise. That is the flight time from Iranian launch facilities to the heart of the Israeli power structure for the DF-27 hypersonic glide vehicle, a weapon system that renders every assumption underlying Israeli national security doctrine completely and permanently obsolete. The number that arrived at Iranian aerospace facilities in the past 48 hours is not speculative. Western intelligence satellites have confirmed the transfer through multiple independent observation platforms. 84 DF-27 hypersonic systems, complete with mobile launch vehicles, targeting infrastructure, and technical support personnel, are now operationally deployed across Iranian territory. 84 systems capable of delivering precision strikes against hardened targets at ranges exceeding 4,000 kilometers with terminal velocities that make interception mathematically impossible using current defensive technologies. To understand the magnitude of this strategic shift, consider that Israel's entire multi-layered air defense architecture, from Iron Dome to David's Sling to Arrow 3, was designed and optimized to intercept ballistic missiles following predictable parabolic trajectories. The DF-27 does not follow a parabolic trajectory. It follows a depressed trajectory glide path with continuous lateral maneuvering capability throughout the terminal phase, executing evasive maneuvers at speeds exceeding Mach 10 while maintaining precision guidance to within 5 meters of designated impact points. The immediate response from the United States Navy reveals the depth of strategic panic now gripping Western military command structures. The USS Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group, which has maintained continuous presence in the Eastern Mediterranean as the cornerstone of American power projection and Israeli security guarantees, received emergency redeployment orders 18 hours ago. The carrier group is not repositioning to a more advantageous tactical position. It is fleeing. The Ford and its accompanying vessels are currently transiting westward through the Strait of Gibraltar at maximum sustainable speed, abandoning the operational theater entirely. This is not a routine rotation. This is strategic abandonment driven by the cold mathematical reality that a $90 billion capital ship represents nothing but a stationary target against hypersonic weapons traveling at 10 times the speed of sound. If this channel has been giving you the analysis that cuts through the noise of official narratives and mainstream defense commentary, now is the moment to make sure you never miss an update. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share this video with everyone in your network who is serious about understanding what is actually happening at the sharp edge of global power competition. The DF-27 represents the operational culmination of 2 decades of Chinese hypersonic research that Western defense establishments dismissed as propaganda until the moment these systems began appearing in active service inventories. The designation DF-27 refers to the Dongfeng series, China's family of ballistic and cruise missiles, with the 27 variant specifically optimized for hypersonic glide vehicle deployment. The system employs a 2-stage solid fuel booster that propels the hypersonic glide vehicle to the edge of space before releasing it on a depressed trajectory that keeps it within the atmosphere throughout the terminal approach phase. This is critical because it allows the glide vehicle to maintain aerodynamic control surfaces for continuous maneuvering while traveling at velocities where traditional ballistic missiles become purely ballistic, following predetermined paths that defensive systems can calculate and intercept. The glide vehicle itself measures approximately 6 meters in length with a wedge-shaped cross-section optimized for hypersonic flight characteristics. The body is constructed from carbon-carbon composite materials capable of withstanding the thermal loading generated by atmospheric friction at Mach 10 plus velocities. The nose cone incorporates an ablative heat shield that chars and sloughs away during flight, carrying heat away from the internal guidance systems. These guidance systems represent perhaps the most significant technical achievement of the DF-27 program. The vehicle maintains GPS satellite navigation, inertial guidance, and terminal phase synthetic aperture radar imaging, allowing it to identify and track mobile targets even during the final seconds of flight when it is experiencing aerodynamic forces that would destroy conventional guidance systems. The warhead options available for the DF-27 include conventional high-explosive penetrator designs for hardened target engagement and thermonuclear variants for strategic deterrence missions. Intelligence reporting indicates that the systems transferred to Iran include both conventional and nuclear-capable variants, though the nuclear warheads themselves have not been transferred, allowing China to maintain technical compliance with non-proliferation obligations while providing Iran with nuclear delivery capability that can be mated with indigenous warhead development the moment Tehran chooses to weaponize its uranium enrichment program. The operational deployment timeline that Western intelligence has reconstructed indicates that Iranian crews have been training on DF-27 systems in mainland China for the past 14 months. This is not a hasty transfer of unfamiliar technology. This is a deliberate, methodical capability transfer that included comprehensive training on launch procedures, targeting protocols, maintenance requirements, and tactical employment doctrine. The Iranian personnel returning from China are not merely button pushers, but fully qualified hypersonic warfare specialists capable of independent operations without ongoing Chinese technical support. The strategic implications of this capability transfer become apparent when examining the targeting options now available to Iranian military planners. From launch sites in Western Iran, DF-27 systems can reach every significant military and governmental facility in Israel within a 3-hour flight window. The Kiryat military headquarters in Tel Aviv, the Nevatim and Ramon air bases housing Israel's F-35I fleet, the port facilities at Haifa and Ashdod, the Dimona nuclear research facility, and the underground command bunkers in the Negev desert are all within range. More significantly, the systems can reach these targets faster than Israel's decision-making cycle allows for response authorization. Israeli leadership would have less than 15 minutes from launch detection to impact, insufficient time for the consensus-building processes that characterize Israeli crisis decision-making. The defensive response options available to Israel range from inadequate to non-existent. The Arrow 3 exoatmospheric interceptor, Israel's most capable defensive system, is designed to intercept ballistic missiles during the mid-course phase of flight when they are traveling through space in predictable trajectories. The DF-27 glide vehicle never enters a mid-course phase. It remains within the atmosphere throughout its flight, continuously maneuvering and constantly changing velocity and trajectory in ways that defeat the predictive algorithms Arrow 3 uses to calculate intercept solutions. The Arrow 2 and David Sling systems, designed for endoatmospheric interception, are optimized against targets traveling at Mach 5 to Mach 7 velocities. Against a Mach 10 plus target executing lateral displacement maneuvers, the intercept probability degrades to near zero. Iron Dome, Israel's most numerous and widely deployed defensive system, is completely irrelevant against hypersonic threats. The system was designed to intercept short-range rockets and artillery shells traveling at subsonic to low supersonic speeds. The radar systems cannot track hypersonic targets with sufficient precision to generate fire control solutions. And even if they could, the Tamar interceptor missiles lack the speed and maneuverability to engage targets moving at 10 times the speed of sound. This defensive inadequacy is not theoretical. It is the cold operational reality that drove the USS Gerald R. Ford out of the Mediterranean and into full retreat toward the Atlantic. The Carrier Strike Group represents the single most expensive concentration of American military power that can be deployed to any theater on Earth. The Ford itself cost $13 billion to construct. The accompanying Ticonderoga-class cruisers and Arleigh Burke-class destroyers represent another $6 billion in capital investment. The air wing embarked on the Ford, consisting of FA-18EF Super Hornets, EA-18G Growlers, E-2D Advanced Hawkeyes, and F-35C Lightning IIs, represents another $8 billion in aircraft acquisition costs. The total capital value of the strike group exceeds $25 billion, not including the nuclear reactors powering the Ford or the training costs for the 5,000 personnel manning these vessels. Against the DF-27, this $25 billion investment is a helpless target. The Aegis combat system deployed across the Carrier Strike Group's escort vessels is the most sophisticated air defense network ever created, capable of tracking and engaging hundreds of simultaneous targets across a battle space spanning hundreds of kilometers. Against hypersonic glide vehicles, Aegis is blind and impotent. The SPY-1 and SPY-6 radar systems can detect hypersonic targets but cannot generate tracking solutions with sufficient precision to support engagement. The SM-3 and SM-6 interceptor missiles, even in their most recent block upgrades, cannot intercept maneuvering targets traveling at Mach 10 plus velocities. The mathematical reality is simple and devastating. The interceptor must not merely reach the vicinity of the target, but must achieve a direct impact against a target that is maneuvering unpredictably while traveling faster than the interceptor's maximum speed. This is not difficult. This is impossible. The Carrier Strike Group's only defensive option against hypersonic attack is evasion, and evasion requires advance warning measured in hours rather than minutes. This explains the emergency redeployment order. The Ford is not running from a specific imminent attack. It is running from the operational reality that its presence within DF-27 range transforms it from a symbol of American power into a static target awaiting destruction. The decision to withdraw the Carrier Group represents the first acknowledged admission by the United States military that there are now zones of the globe where American carrier power cannot operate due to adversary weapons capabilities. This is a threshold moment in the history of naval warfare, comparable to the obsolescence of the battleship in the face of carrier aviation. The weapon system that has defined American global power projection for 80 years can no longer fulfill that mission in contested environments against peer competitors with advanced strike capabilities. The broader strategic implications extend far beyond a single weapons transfer or a single carrier withdrawal. What occurred in the past 72 hours is a fundamental reordering of the Middle Eastern balance of power that no amount of American aid packages or diplomatic assurances can reverse. Israel faces a threat that its defensive systems cannot counter, that its offensive capabilities cannot preempt, and that its strategic doctrine provides no answer for. The nuclear deterrent that has underwritten Israeli security since the 1960s is neutralized because Iran now possesses a conventional capability to decapitate Israeli leadership faster than nuclear release authorization can be transmitted. The American security guarantee that has backstopped Israeli military power for half a century is revealed as hollow because the platforms that would deliver American firepower cannot survive in the battle space. Tehran has achieved through patient strategic acquisition what decades of revolutionary rhetoric could not accomplish. Iran now possesses genuine strategic parity with Israel in the most consequential dimension of military power: the ability to inflict catastrophic damage on the adversary's homeland with weapons that cannot be intercepted. This parity fundamentally transforms the coercive dynamics that have characterized Israeli-Iranian confrontation. Every Israeli threat to strike Iranian nuclear facilities must now be weighed against the reality that Iran can respond with precision hypersonic strikes against Israeli population centers and critical infrastructure. Every American threat of military action to support Israeli operations must now account for the vulnerability of American naval forces to weapons that can sink aircraft carriers faster than defensive systems can respond. The regional actors observing this transformation are already recalculating their strategic alignments. The Gulf monarchies that have moved toward normalization with Israel on the assumption that Israeli military superiority combined with American security guarantees created a stable basis for cooperation now face a different calculus. If Israel cannot defend itself against Iranian strike capabilities, and if American carriers flee from Iranian weapons ranges, what value does the Israeli security partnership provide? What protection do American commitments offer? The gravitational pull of Tehran grows stronger with every percentage point of doubt about Western security guarantees. Turkey, which has maintained complex relationships with both Iranian and Western power structures, now sees validation of its hedging strategy and incentive to deepen cooperation with powers demonstrating technological and strategic competence that the West can no longer match. Pakistan, which maintains defense relationships with China and shares theological and civilizational affinity with Iran, observes a template for achieving strategic autonomy through acquisition of capabilities that render Western military advantages obsolete. Egypt, which has accepted billions in American military aid while maintaining its own regional ambitions, calculates whether continued alignment with a declining hegemon serves Egyptian interests or constrains Egyptian options. The Russian Federation, which has its own extensive inventory of hypersonic systems, including the Avangard, Kinjal, and Zircon, observes with satisfaction as the weapon category where Russia maintains technological leadership over the West delivers strategic victories without a shot being fired. Every American carrier that withdraws from a theater due to hypersonic threat is a carrier unavailable for potential operations in the Black Sea or the Pacific. Every percentage point of American strategic attention consumed by the Middle Eastern crisis is a percentage point not applied to Ukraine, not applied to NATO's eastern flank, not applied to the Pacific deterrence posture, creating pressure relief across every theater where Russia faces American-backed opposition. The People's Republic of China, which developed and transferred the DF-27 systems, demonstrates both technological sophistication and strategic patience. Beijing achieves multiple objectives through a single transaction. China strengthens a strategic partner that complicates American and Israeli operations in a region where Chinese energy security interests are paramount. China demonstrates to potential partners across the global South that alignment with China provides access to military capabilities that can genuinely challenge Western dominance. China validates the technological trajectory of its defense industrial base, proving that Chinese systems can not merely match but exceed Western capabilities in the domains that matter most. And China does all of this without deploying a single Chinese soldier, firing a single Chinese weapon, or accepting any direct military risk. This is strategic leverage at its most refined. What becomes apparent when examining the full scope of these developments is that the world has crossed a threshold that cannot be uncrossed. The comfortable assumptions that have underwritten Western military planning and Middle Eastern security architecture for the past 3 decades are now operational fiction. The assumption that American carrier groups can operate with impunity in any ocean on Earth is dead. The assumption that Israel possesses unchallengeable conventional military superiority over regional adversaries is dead. The assumption that technological advantages allow smaller Western forces to dominate larger adversary forces is dead. The assumption that missile defense can reliably protect against determined missile offense is dead. These assumptions are not dying gradually through incremental erosion. They are dying catastrophically through sudden technological surprise that renders decades of investment in defensive systems and operational concepts obsolete overnight. The West is experiencing what military theorists call a revolution in military affairs. But unlike previous revolutions that the West pioneered and exploited, this revolution is being driven by adversaries and is being exploited against Western forces. The hypersonic revolution that China, Russia, and now Iran are mastering is creating a battle space environment where Western platforms designed for an earlier era of warfare are simply unable to function. The human dimension of this strategic transformation manifests in the emergency meetings now occurring across Western capitals and military headquarters. In Tel Aviv, Israeli defense officials confront threat assessments that provide no good options. Strike Iranian facilities before the DF-27 systems become fully operational. The systems are already operational, dispersed across hardened facilities and mobile launchers, and any strike would be met with hypersonic retaliation that could devastate Israeli cities. Develop new defensive systems capable of intercepting hypersonic threats. The physics of hypersonic interception are so challenging that American programs with vastly larger budgets than Israel can field have failed to produce viable systems after 2 decades of effort. Accept the new strategic reality and seek diplomatic accommodation. This would require abandoning decades of strategic doctrine and accepting Iranian conventional parity as permanent fact. In Washington, American strategists face their own impossible calculus. Recommit carrier forces to the Mediterranean to demonstrate resolve and alliance credibility. This risks losing a capital ship to a weapon system that American defenses cannot counter, a propaganda catastrophe that would shatter American military prestige globally. Maintain the withdrawal and accept the strategic implications. This confirms to allies and adversaries alike that American security guarantees are conditional on American force survivability. And when adversaries acquire weapons that threaten American platforms, American commitments evaporate. Accelerate American hypersonic programs to achieve parity. American programs are years behind Chinese and Russian equivalents, and the industrial base cannot rapidly scale production even if technical challenges were solved tomorrow. The choice facing Western decision makers is between bad options and worse options, between accepting strategic defeat in the Middle East or risking operational catastrophe in pursuit of unachievable objectives. This is the paralysis of declining hegemonic power confronting rising challengers who have achieved technological and strategic breakthroughs that the hegemon cannot quickly counter. It is the paralysis of military establishments that spent decades optimizing for counterinsurgency operations and great power competition in abstract future tense, only to discover that great power competition has arrived in present tense with weapons that render the established order's military advantages meaningless. The next 72 hours will reveal whether Western leadership possesses the strategic imagination to adapt to this new reality, or whether institutional inertia and ideological rigidity will drive decisions that accelerate the very decline they are intended to arrest. But regardless of what choices Washington and Tel Aviv make in the coming hours, the fundamental reality is already fixed. Iran possesses weapons that Israel cannot defend against. American carriers cannot operate in the Eastern Mediterranean. The strategic balance in the Middle East has shifted permanently. And the unipolar moment that began with the Soviet collapse and was sustained through unchallenged American military dominance has ended not with a gradual transition, but with a sudden collapse driven by technological surprise and strategic miscalculation. Tonight's developments represent more than a regional crisis or a tactical setback. They represent the visible manifestation of a deeper transformation in global power distribution that has been building for years beneath the surface of official narratives and comfortable assumptions. The rise of China as a technological peer competitor, the resurgence of Russia as a military power willing to challenge Western dominance, the emergence of regional powers like Iran with genuine strategic autonomy and increasingly sophisticated capabilities. These are not temporary aberrations, but structural features of an emerging international system that will define the remainder of this century. If you want analysis this sharp, this deep, this willing to challenge official narratives, subscribe now to ensure you never miss an update. The mainstream defense commentary will spend the next week explaining why this weapons transfer doesn't matter, why defensive systems will adapt, why American power remains unchallengeable. This channel will continue providing the analysis that treats you like an adult capable of confronting uncomfortable realities rather than a child requiring comforting reassurance. The historical parallel that keeps appearing in strategic analysis is the period between 1905 and 1914, when the HMS Dreadnought revolutionized naval warfare and triggered an arms race that culminated in World War I. The Dreadnought rendered every existing battleship obsolete overnight, creating a new category of warship that defined naval power for the next 4 decades. The DF-27 and its hypersonic equivalents are the dreadnoughts of our era, weapons that obsolete existing platforms and force a complete rethinking of military strategy, operational doctrine, and force structure. The question is whether the powers navigating this technological transition will manage it peacefully, or whether, as in the early 20th century, the destabilizing effects of rapid military technological change will combine with great power competition to produce catastrophic conflict. The world will never be the same after tonight. The old certainties about Western military dominance, about the invincibility of American carrier power, about the security of Israeli territory behind missile defense systems, these certainties are gone, and they are not coming back. What replaces them is an international system where power is more evenly distributed, where regional actors possess capabilities that can genuinely challenge great powers, where technological surprise can overturn established hierarchies, and where the comfortable assumptions of the past 3 decades provide no guidance for navigating the dangerous uncertainties of the emerging order. Every percentage point of attention you invest in understanding these transformations is a percentage point invested in comprehending the world you and your children will inhabit for the rest of your lives. This is not entertainment. This is not speculation. This is the future arriving ahead of schedule and demanding that those with eyes to see acknowledge what is actually happening rather than what official narratives claim is happening. Subscribe to this channel because in a world this dangerous, analysis this sharp is not optional. It is necessary. Share this video with everyone in your network who understands that history is being made in real time, and that understanding these transformations is the difference between navigating them successfully and being blindsided by consequences that could have been anticipated. What is your assessment of where this goes from here? Has Iran achieved permanent strategic parity with Israel, or will Western technological response restore the previous balance? Does the carrier withdrawal from the Mediterranean represent temporary caution or permanent retreat from a theater where American naval power can no longer operate? Your engagement keeps this analysis independent and sharp. Leave your assessment in the comments, and let's build understanding together of the emerging realities that official narratives refuse to acknowledge. Tonight, history did not merely turn a page. It slammed the entire book shut and set it on fire. Stay sharp, stay ahead, and never stop asking the questions that matter.